वेलकम टू वीलर्न में आपका स्वागत है. We are discussing session 6 pricing in banks under subject banking operations. Topics covered are management of deposits and deposits related services, pricing deposit products, steps for pricing banking products, pricing lending products, commercial loan, consumer loan, rates below the PLR. Management of deposits and deposit related services. Deposits जो हैं, in broader meaning, they are basically created either from the actual cash or from the credit instruments which are left by the customers, and lastly by the credit extended by the bank itself. Such deposits, they contribute and they constitute a very foundation on which a bank is able to erect its structure of credit. Now when we discuss from this point of view, the relation between the bank and the depositor, the opening of the account and the payment of interest on deposits, inducement which is offered to the new customers, and the opening of account. When we say pricing deposit products, the pricing is a very important part in a marketing mix. So if a product it is not given a correct price, क्या होता है, वो sales को ज़रूर affect करता है, and that may ultimately lead to the failure of the product. Price और sales हैं, they are interrelated and they are dependent on one another. There are 6 main strategies which needs to settle the price of the product. जो पहला है वो है cost plus profit. So this is a very sensitive strategy of cost. So the institutions, they calculate how much would be the manufacturing of the product cost, and they add a margin of profit and which is required for the client purposes. The second is the settlement of prices for taking the cream. Now this strategy, it may be used for products that are very new and of very high quality. It basically means that the settlement of the price when the product is freshly introduced on the market to take the cream of the demand of the product, and this helps in maximizing the profit to cover the research and development expenses also. The third is the settlement of the price depending on the competition. This strategy, it takes into consideration that the price the competition practices, thus the price will be similar to that one of the competition. But it also allows the covering of the expenses and the profit margin as well. The fourth is the settlement of the price on the market. Here the price of a product is basically settled depending on the price of a similar product which is already there in the market. So the difference in comparison to the settlement of the price, it depends on the competition. It basically a very significant settlement of the price, and which is on the market wherein it might not cover the production expenses of the product. The fifth is the settlement of the price depending on the value. Now this particular approach is based on the valuation of the client's perception when they compared the value of the product answering the question, that is how much a client would pay for the product. And this strategy is mostly oriented towards marketing. The last is the settlement of the price to penetrate. Now the bank will settle a lower price for a product with an aim to win a fast big quota of the market, and this helps in realizing a fast and a substantial potential. Now, steps for pricing banking products. So the main problem at the time of introducing a new complementary service or a substantially redefined one is basically represented by the rarity or the non-existence of relevant historical data which is relating to the cost. So that's why the person who is elaborating the pricing strategy, he can involve the problem through orthodox marketing problem, establishing first the optimum sales price, then estimating the tolerable production level and the marketing mix. Now the first step, it basically consists of the identification of all the competitive products which are both the personal and that of the competitors, which offer the clients more or less the same benefits, and their analysis also. There are exceptions wherein at an unusual market or a market where there are little suppliers, those who are activated, probably there the result will be a series of prices from high price service that implies certain special or exclusive characteristics to a low price service also. The second is basically an approximate determination of the place the new products or services they will occupy in the price hierarchy. Now, by taking into account that special feature of the advantages that can justify its introduction, at a very certain extent the opinion of the client is also useful in this sense. So by discussing it with the potential customer, the chosen one on the basis of a representative pattern that has already been established in the developing process of the product, it is also possible to establish how important are the basic common features of the majority contestant services. Third is the where regularly carried out simultaneously, it is carried out with the second stage. Here what happened, the estimation of the sales volume, it can be obtained at a chosen price, and the calculation of the afferent cost. Now the two cost categories, they are taken into account. The first is the fixed cost, which is more or less of the service supply, and the variable cost of the necessary raw materials, to which it is added the planned commercialization expenses. The fourth step is basically consists in the combination of the interdependent variables of price, volume and sales expenses, that the net obtained by the company to be maximized. Now the calculation, they must take into account the time limit regarding the materialization of the profit, as well as the possible income losses from other services, from the range of those which are offered by the bank and those which are adjacent to the new product. The fifth step is very important. If the proposition it is proved to be feasible, a price is established and the product is launched as a test market or on a general scale. At this moment, the essential stage is controlling the effective result in comparison to the estimations which are made and adopting the corrective measures. Now how they are done? They are done by reducing the price or increasing the sales and intensification of the sales promotion campaign in case the results are not as those which are expected. When we talk about commercial loans is basically a term which is very commonly used to designated loan that are not ordinarily maintained either by the real estate or the consumer loan department. Now, in asset distribution, commercial or business loans, they are frequently comprising of one of the most important assets of the National Bank. They may be secured or unsecured and for a short or long-term maturities. Now, such loans, they include working capital advances, term business loan, even agricultural credits are also included. So the downward rigidity in lending rate, it is reflected in spreads over prime lending rates, that are PLRs. So unconsciously there are wide spreads which are unwarranted in a period of low inflation. Now, moreover, what happened, adversely they have an impact on the overall credit portfolio of the bank, and they obscure the appropriate pricing of the loans. Now, when the deregulation of the lending rates have happened since 1919, there is a very striking characteristics of loans pricing behavior among banks that have been the wide depression in and around the prime lending rates. So the resistance of banks to pass on some of the gains of a lower interest rate regime to borrowers, they have evoked concern in successive monetary policy statements since October 1996. The second is consumer loans when we talk about. So consumer loans mean what happens, bank, they refrain from offering the 0% interest rates on consumer durable advances to borrowers through adjustment of discounts which are available from manufacturers or dealer of goods. Now, since such loan schemes, they lack transparency in their operation and distort price mechanism of loan products. Now, these products, they also do not give a very clear picture to the customers also about the applicable interest rates. Banks, they should also not promote such scheme by releasing advertisement in different newspapers or medias which indicate that they are promoting or financing consumer under such scheme. They should also refrain themselves from linking their names in any of the forms or manner with any incentive based advertising where clarity regarding the interest rate is absent. Now, in the interest of the customer protection and also to infuse healthy competition among banks under condition of full information and transparency, the Reserve Bank, it has institutionalized a system of collecting actual lending rate from scheduled commercial banks under a special quarterly return which was issued in July 2002. Now, here information is basically sought on the range of the interest rate on rupee export credit as well as other type of bank credits. Banks, therefore, they are also advised to ignore the extreme values in the lending rates which are approximately up to 5% of the advances on either sides while submitting the information. Banks, they also furnish the range of interest rates in which there is a concentration of loan contracts. When we talk about rates which are below the PLR, banks, they were encouraged to switch to all the cost concept of pricing loans by explicitly declaring processing charges and service charges. So in order to enhance the transparency, a benchmark PLR, it was advised for all the banks, and it takes care into account their actual cost of funds and the operating expenses also. A minimum margin is also taken to cover the regulatory requirement of provisioning or capital charge and the profit margin. Since all other lending rates can be determined with reference to the benchmark PLR, the system of tenor-linked PNR is to be discounted. अब क्या हो रहा है, because there is competition among banks and which is also increasing the flow of credit to the export sector. Now the interest rate, they are basically denominated with the export credit when they were liberalized. A ceiling rate on rupee export credit, it is linked to the relevant tenor prime lending rate which was introducing, and this gave bank the freedom to charge the rates below the prescribed rate from May 2001. Now what is happening, the ceiling rate on rupee export credit, they were reduced by 1% point across board, and it was effective from September 26, 2001. Now there is a determination of benchmark while PLR is taken care of. Now in order to ensure transparency and enhance the transparency in banks' pricing of their loan and products, it is also to ensure that the BPLR, it truly reflects the actual cost. Banks are required to follow suggestions for determination of their benchmark PLR. Now the first is, bank should take into account their actual cost of funds, operating expenses, and a minimum margin to cover the regulatory requirements of provisioning or capital charges. The second is the benchmark PLR. It would be the ceiling rate for credit limit up to rupees 2 lakh. Third, since all the other lending rates, it can be determined with reference to the benchmark PLR, which is arrived at by taking into account the term premia and or risk premia, the system of tenor-linked PNR is discontinued. These premia can be factored in the spread of or below the BPLR. Second is, banks, they are also advised that in the interest of the consumer protection and to have greater degree of transparency in regard to actual interest rates be charged to the borrower. So they continue to provide information on minimum and maximum interest rates which are charged together with the benchmarked PLR. Two exercises. What are the steps for pricing banking products, and what are various types of pricing deposit products? Thank you and have a nice day. Keep learning and relearning.